Game begin.
Hello and welcome back to the Spike Colony podcast. I'm here with your regular co-host, the $10 tempting worm himself, Michael J. Flores.
That's how much they cost now?
10 freaking dollars. Imagine if our podcast was 5 hours long. It would have been 15 or 30.
I actually want to go back into my cool stuff orders and see how much I paid for my tempting worms.
Yeah. Are we holding till they hit 50?
No, if they hit 50, we just have $50 tempting worms. This is like it's magic economics. Buy high, never sell.
Yeah, that's actually how it works. Right?
What are you looking for?
All right. Do we want to play the who paid less game?
I'm sure you paid less.
Do you think? I wonder who got it less. I found my order, but I don't have prices on it. So, okay, I got prices. Wait, no, I have to figure out which one, because if you do TCG Player, it like splits it out by vendor. So I have to figure out which vendor shipped me the.
I mean, I don't like. Now I'm like, how many orders back am I gonna look? This is not. I never mind. Fuck. Fuck looking up how much I paid.
Well, no. So life hack. You can check your email history for the.
I did that. I have so many mentions of tempting worm in.
Yeah, because every single time we release a podcast that mentions tempting worm. So I noticed one thing that was very interesting was that tempting worm, this is not the first time that tempting worm has spiked, right?
Yeah.
It has actually spiked in 2023 around the same time of year. So that was like super surprising, and I wanted to, and I haven't got the chance to try to figure out what was going on the first time it spiked, because it feels like it just has to be pre-modern. It's only ever.
Okay, I just added 16 $2.50 tempting worms to my cart. Just FYI. So I'm going to buy them all.
Buy them now.
They're done.
Maybe the bubble burst already, and we Trump coined the tempting worm stock already.
I always forget what cards do I need? I always forget what cards I need. And I'm like, oh shoot, I'm so annoyed. I should have gotten this other card.
So we had Meetup this week.
Yeah.
How'd your Meetup go, Mike?
Awful. Terrible. Could not have been worse. Lost to a donkey. My mana didn't come out. Lost to a donkey. How did yours go?
It went fine. I had a 3-0 start. Crushed.
Oh really? Did you win the Meetup?
Crushed a donkey in the third round.
Oh yeah.
But then in the final round, I of course met my.
Wait, hold on a second. So you finished the Meetup at 3-1.
That's correct.
Interesting. So did I.
Yeah.
Terrible night.
Well, the road to the championship goes through SWB now.
Yeah, it used to be goes through Lanny, but
SWB has proven that part is not that difficult. It's just like paired against a Meetup, lost. Last Meetup, paired against him, lost. Paired against him at LobsterCon, lost.
The last few Meetups I won, I beat SWB. So I guess it goes through him. But
so it's a triangle where SW beats me, beats you, beats SWB. So it really.
I actually obeyed the all Meetups. Also, all victory goes through Lanny paradigm, and played a deck that was good against your deck, and I lost.
Allegedly.
So here's the thing: like, there's almost no. I don't even know what point there is to this discussion. So you tell me. If we're gonna have this, it's gonna be a roundabout discussion.
No. We should have this. This is actually very interesting to me, because this is a paradigm. This is like a paradigm that's worth unpacking, right? Because effectively, there's something going on here, and we don't know what it is. And I'm not going down with the ship on what I think is going on. I think it's just interesting to talk about. So. I played Burn. I played Lanny Burn, 22 lands, 4 Sulfuric Vortex, 4 Barbarian Ring, and the rest is just the same Burn cards. I play Seal of Fire, which is obviously incredible. And you played Black-Green, Survival Rock with Palancrombo in the sideboard, which cost you a singular $10 tempting worm. So you went down to 2 Tempting Worm sideboard, 1 main.
Yeah.
So minus fractions of points in the burn matchup where you want to see a lot of Tempting Worm. Am I right?
Yeah. So Fake won, didn't, then ultimately didn't win the last meetup. So it went to Dr. Surf and Surf. SBB, spoiler, SBB played Dr. Surf and Surf in this one. So Dr. Surf and Surf is apparently dominating.
Yeah,
the
Dr. Surf and Surf is 9-0 in consecutive meetups.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that next.
So the Rock Sir is the deck of the week or whatever the past couple of weeks. It's been rising in the New York scene. So I decided to play Palin Crombo in the sideboard, right? So what I did was I just changed 1 card in my main deck, which was a Yavimaya Elder. I changed to a Yavimaya Granger, and then I added a 3rd Recurring Nightmare to my sideboard and a Palancron to my sideboard. I almost was thinking about Great Whale because you can't cast Palancron or bounce it in this deck, really. So I thought Great Whale would be like more insulting to defeat someone with. And like a Palancron is just such a classically good card, but a Great Whale is a donkey. So I was just like, and I was just like,
I agree with the line of reasoning here.
Yeah, so 100%. I was like, maybe I could do Peregrine Drake, and I was like, actually, there might be situations where the Peregrine Drake doesn't untap enough lands for me to win, so maybe I won't go that far. But so anyway, I played it just for the mirror and also for corner cases. So I should have sided it in round 1, but I just got lucky. So I showed up a half an hour late, but the tournament organizer, which is weird because he's a donkey, said that if I showed up by 7, like, they just let me play. And I didn't realize I was being penalized by 30 minutes. So I had to win the black-green on black-white matchup in 21 minutes. And so I got whatever game I played, right? It was, and then like this donkey's just like 12 minutes. And I'm like, oh, shoot. And I almost sided in the Palin combo because I'm like, if I go to extra turns, then I'll win. I could win with the combo. But my opponent just like barely gave me enough life. But I just let him use Phyrexian Arena and did not do anything to interrupt his Phyrexian Arena. And he's Skeletal Scrying to basically so my Massacre could kill him. Right? So asterisk on this one. I got that. But then in the second round, I played in the mirror match. And everything went exactly the way I planned, and we could talk about that. And I won game 3 with the Palin combo.
Right.
Like everything was exactly the way I planned, and exactly how we sketched it out. So
we can talk. I mean, we can talk about the mirror. We had a discussion about the mirror, which was that basically the first you need to get survival, then you need to get Withered Wretch, so that if your opponent gets survival, their survival does nothing. Then you need to get Masticore to kill your opponent's Withered Wretch, so that your survival does something. Then after that, you get Palin Crombo and then win. So for the uninitiated.
Wait, hold. Let me just describe this. Game 1, I won on skill, obviously. Nobody had survival dominance in game 1. So, but I just won that one. Game 2, I just did everything. He had a natural Nantuko. I answered it with Bone Shredder. I set up my Withered Wretch, took out Genesis and Squee. And I'm like, okay, I've got it. And he just naturally drew Withered Wretch and then naturally drew Masticore. And I naturally drew like 7 land in a row, and he just killed me with Masticore. It was horrible, but it was just like, there's just no way out of this. As long as he just doesn't tap down for the Masticore, I can't win. Because I couldn't even commit to my graveyard because he had Withered Wretch in play that I couldn't deal with. Right. So and then in game 3, we're just like in the back and forth juke, and he taps out for a big turn, and then I didn't kill him. I put him into a really bad situation.
Yeah, you put him at 0 cards in hand. So the way the combo works is that with Recurring Nightmare and Palancron and eventually Granger. 7 lands, you start with 6 lands, but the Granger allows you to get increasingly more lands.
You can start it on 5 if you have a Granger in the graveyard.
Yeah, if you have a Granger. But basically, Palancron, putting Palancron in play with Recurring Nightmare costs 6 mana, and Palancron untaps 7 lands. So as long as you start with a Recurring Nightmare on the battlefield, and a Palinchron in your graveyard, or even in your hand with Survival of the Fittest in play, you can put a Granger, get a Granger to get your 6th land, then get Palinchron to untap 6, and then loop your Palinchron through your Granger to get 7, 8, 9, 10. But each time you go +1, so you have infinite mana. Unfortunately, you're a black-green deck, so what do you do with infinite mana? It's like, well, you have infinite survival activation, so you can get as many creatures as you started the turn with your hand in. So if you have like a couple... if you have a couple creatures in hand, you can do a few things. You can get Masticore, kill your opponent's board. You can get Sadistic Hypnosis and Deranged Hermit, make infinite squirrels, and empty your opponent's hands. Pass the turn, of course they lose, et cetera, et cetera. And you can, of course, get Spike Feeder and loop Spike Feeder through your Recurring Nightmare, and each time move a counter over to a Bird of Paradise or whatever can attack and kill your opponent that way. So you didn't have the Spike Feeder. The other option is Krovikan Horror, which you just didn't have in your deck, but was kind of, you mentioned, would be good to have in the deck just because
it's also
another
a good
squee.
card.
Yeah.
So
it's another squee, and then it's also just like, it's also just a value engine in it's actually weird
triple
grinding
squee.
games.
If you have enough mana, Krovikan Horror loops every turn, and squee only loops once per turn cycle.
Yeah.
So Krovikan Horror is actually, if you have enough mana, Krovikan Horror is actually quite a bit better than squee.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a big if, right? So
it's sometimes just dealing damage to like, it's just like another way to remove like,
it's like a 5 mana
creature.
kill a Bird of Paradise in the mirror. It's like,
yeah,
it's not.
But in other situations, right? You have like this like pretty good chump blocker that can, and then you can also like go face if your opponent's low on life. So it's kind of a cool thing. So anyways, you had theory crafted that you would just convert to this infinite combo in the mirror because you're like, the mirror is going to be a thing that happens. You got paid off. Then you faced.
So wait, pause on that one.
Sure.
The big change that I'm thinking about making is just changing the Ravenous Baloth into a Spike Feeder.
Right, because it's free. Yeah.
Like, it's hard to say. Like, the thing is, like, Ravenous Baloth is a substantially better card than Spike Feeder in a lot of situations, right? Like, if you just need a guy, it's actually quite a bit better than a 2/2 for 3. But Spike Feeder is the cheapest way to go if you're gonna make your deck so that it can do the combo, because you don't have to buy any more cards.
Yeah.
Right. Like, all these other things are, all right, I have to add a Krovikan Horror now or something like that. And that's like,
it's a similar effect as like you changed an Elder for a Granger to enable.
Such a
like once cost, again, you changed a Baloth for a Feeder. And I co-sign that. I think that if you care about Baloth being a 4/4, like I just can't imagine like adding 1 4/4 to your deck is like that interesting compared to like having a card that's like a little bit leaner where every mana super counts against the tricky burn matchup, and of course enables you to make infinite +1/+1 counters. But I if you wanted to like argue back, you could just be like, listen, you have infinite squirrels and your opponent has no
cards in hand, right? Yeah. That's the situation I put
we forgot to mention that once you have infinite mana, if you have Wall of Blossoms anywhere in your universe, then you draw your whole deck.
No. I only drew 7. Yeah. I drew 7 and stopped looping it.
Yeah. So I had previously said you have as many creatures as you have in hand. That's only if you don't have Wall of Blossoms. Sorry, Wall of Blossoms. So if you have Wall of Blossoms, then you
actually only need one creature in hand, right? If you have one creature in hand,
you get the blossoms. Yeah,
you could put anything you wanted in your graveyard, and then once you've created a prohibitive number of squirrels or a prohibitive amount of mana, you could just kind of do whatever you want, because one creature is enough to.
So I would probably say you can leave Feeder at home, but it's like nice if like specifically you're playing against like Devourer combo and they have like a Altar of Dementia on the battlefield, so you pass the turn, they have 0 cards in hand, and
they might
top deck a Tinker, and
or like people could just like top deck I don't know, if it's like somebody top decking a Chroma's Vengeance is pretty bad in this situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no rebuild now. Right?
So
like,
you might as well kill them, Yeah. But it's tough because your Spike Feeder is a real bad card against an Chroma's Vengeance deck, and you'd actually rather have Baloth. But we're kind of too deep on this. It's a cool idea. So you're completely vindicated that it worked out in exactly the scenario you planned it out for. So
and the non-combo game worked out exactly the way. Like my opponent literally just naturally drew Withered Wretch and then naturally drew Masticore when I was like infinite ahead on the battlefield, and I'm like, I can't do anything because I'm just drawing lands, and I can't commit to my graveyard with Squee because he has Withered Wretch in play.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just need him to screw up.
Yeah, it was
this is like this. Just screw up. I've got it right. Like, and he just didn't ever go in a situation where he couldn't activate a Withered Wretch and couldn't regenerate a Masticore.
Yeah,
I was like, ugh. But I just kept drawing land. But yeah, game 3. The thing is, the combo is so fast. It's so fast in the sense that your opponent just does something, right, and then like leaves 2 mana open. You can just kill them depending on the Wretch versus Masticore situation.
Yeah. So anyways, the marquee event was you get paired into me, and you're just like licking your lips. You're just
actually, I wasn't. I thought you were on goblins because you had told me previously that you were going to be on goblins, right? And then I lost the roll. So I lost the roll, and then I was just like, well, what am I supposed to do, right? Like he's kind of got it or he's not. There's nothing. This deck can't really do anything if it has the horrible penalty of going second in a lot of these red deck matches, right? Like I'm pretty confident if I had just won the roll with same draws in game 1, I would have won, right?
Yeah.
But like
maybe.
But you won game 1, and that allowed you to get in literally 2 points of Jackal Pup damage. That was it. You were dead.
Oh no, I plus 2'd you in the end.
Oh, did you? You plus
I plus 2'd you because remember when I had the ball.
Oh, because you would have had to.
Yeah, I would have just also had a that might have been game 2, but anyways, like there was no. There was like there was like a turn I killed you, and then I was just like being silly because I was just like, oh, I attack and I know my attack's gonna put the 7th card for Grim, but I'm also like sitting there and I have a Mog Fanatic in hand.
I was at 3, right? So the problem was the Mog Fanatic puts me at 2, and either I block the Jackal Pup or I don't. If I block the Jackal Pup, it goes to the graveyard and you can activate the this was like a fun situation. So I have 6 cards in graveyard. I have 2 Barbarian. I have like Mountain Barbarian Ring. Maybe it's like 2 Mountains Barbarian Ring or a Mountain 2 Barbarian Ring. There's two Mountains and a Barbarian Ring.
I got 2 Mountains and a Barbarian Ring. I have 6 cards in my graveyard. I have 2 Grim Lavamancers and a Jackal Pup. So you're just like you didn't do the math. Like you probably just didn't.
No. I made the only plays I could.
I understand. Well, going into the turn, you were deterministically dead, but you were just like, okay, like let's see, like as if my top deck mattered. And then I was like, yeah, let's see. And I just like attacked with 2 of my creatures. You're at 3, so you can't. You had a wall and a Masticore, so you can't block something without killing it if you had 2 walls.
At that point, I knew I was in a lot of trouble. The turn that
you're dead, not trouble, just you're dead. Right?
Sure, but the turn that mattered was 2 turns earlier when you drew the second ball lightning. Yeah. Right? Because if you don't draw the second ball lightning, even a Fire Blast doesn't put me deterministically dead at that point.
Yeah,
right?
So
you're actually dead to my Masticore if you don't draw ball lightning.
But anyway, so we had a mix of games. So basically, game one, you put yourself in a situation where it was like we're like fighting, stuff is going on. I get like a Sulfuric Vortex. You get a Masticore to put my board, into control. So it was like actually a super interesting situation. And then like a ball lightning came at the right time.
Yeah.
In game 2, you were
draw
stuck.
Ball lightning immediately, and I can't defend against the ball lightning, right? Because my plan is the Masticore.
Yeah.
Right. So the problem there is it's not even a problem. Like in my head, I'm like, there's a bunch of plays I can make. Right. If I go for Nantuko in this situation, a ton of stuff can go wrong. In part because I can't even play and activate the Nantuko.
Yeah. That's
right.
Problem.
So I'm like,
one.
My options are like Nantuko, Masticore, Ravenous Baloth, or walls, right? Or like I could get like a wall or a Tempting Worm or something.
Yeah, and the Baloth notably would not have been a thing because there's a Vortex in play, right?
It's fine because I have an active Survival and a Wall of Roots, but it's not I don't think it's as good as Masticore because the thing is that if you don't draw ball lightning, when I say draw, what you actually drew was ball lightning, right? But like if you fade twice or something, that score just literally wins the game because you can't defend yourself against the Masticore with Jackal Pups at that point.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I also can't defend with Mog Fanatic. So that's like the more reasonable thing. It's like if I draw like Grim Mog Fanatic, then it can chump block a Baloth, but it can't block a Masticore. So.
Yeah, that was a play John Finkel taught me in like the top 8 of Nationals 2000.
To survival for Masticore.
No, he went for this play against Aaron Forsyth that loses the game like double-digit percentage of the time. Just straight up loses the game double-digit percentage of the time. And it wins the remaining percentage of the time. And it's close to 50-50, right?
It's inverse credit card game where you win if your credit card gets picked.
So, and I think because he did it with Vampiric Tutor, right? He Vampiric Tutors for a Thrashing Wumpus, which is going to cost him life. Same as the situation I'm in. Yeah. But like if he establishes with the Thrashing Wumpus, he's going to win narrowly, right? But he could have gone for a whole lot of other things that basically elongate the game, right?
Yeah,
like
classic play to win versus play to not lose. Yeah.
Because I'm thinking like, because you made an observation, just like, oh, you apply the philosophy of fire when you're on the red side and not when you're on the other side. I'm like, in this game, I'm like, as a red player, like, how afraid am I of somebody who's using all their mana to just get a bunch of O5s, right? Like, there's already a vortex in play. Like, my number of live draws is so high.
No,
right?
I absolutely think that you're correct in getting the Massacre, and I just like didn't even have it in your range because I'm just sitting there and I'm just like your life total is going down. I'm just going to win the game, right? So got the Massacre.
I'm thinking my life total is going down. I need to
So
play that maybe I'll win.
So I was actually like mildly caught off guard because I was just like, okay, I have this locked up and there's like literally nothing you can do. And then so you got the Massacre and I was just like, oh, I guess this like makes things interesting. Now I have to like think about what I'm doing.
Then you
with
drew
my
ball
stuff.
lightning and sent. I can't block the ball lightning. It's like I cannot block the ball.
I
block the ball lightning to save 4 life.
Yeah, the turn cycle.
I no longer have any assets.
The turn cycle was excellent. It was like past the turn, I have like Grim Lavamancer. Like I have like Battlefield, but I have like maybe 1 or 2 cards in hand, and neither of them are Fire Blast, right? And then so you tap out and play, like you go end of turn survival for Massacre, play Massacre. You didn't, what I thought was super interesting about this game, and probably or entirely because I was on the play, and was able to sealify your bird or whatever. But I was on the play, and you didn't have an extra green mana to get Squeak. So you massacred yourself. You Massacre locked yourself because that was like your only out. You didn't even have time to get the Squee into the mix because all you have is 2 like survival and 4 lands.
Yeah, but Massacred 4 lands wins the game.
No. I understand. You see the line that I'm making is like this is the amount of pressure that you're under, right? Like normally, like obviously you want your draw step, right? So like getting Squee would have been like a thing. You had used every single one point of mana every single turn up until this point, just so that you could put a Massacre on the table. So anyways, you tap out for Massacre, and then I was just like, oh, that's actually interesting. I could possibly lose the game. And then I draw a card and it's Ball Lightning. I'm like, I will play Ball Lightning and attack. And you're just like, well,
I it was still within the range because you had to take 4 from a Jackal Pup, and then I'm like, I could still win this game, right?
Yeah.
But like, and obviously I didn't. But but I was just like, I just need these things. If he fades once or something, I think I win.
And the second game was not close, but was interesting. You kept a 1-lander, but it had 2 tempting worms.
So I mulliganed into a 1-land.
Yeah. Right? And the 1 land was Land War Waste.
Yeah. So here's the problem: is that like
Land War Waste exists.
I like Land War. Yeah. So I'm like Land War Waste's bird, right? And Lanny immediately sealifiers it. And I have like 19 draws here. Like I could draw any land in my deck or a Bird of Paradise. I probably win the game, right? So I don't draw a land. So the reason I kept
had to draw. I was
already on 6, right? But my hand was like Bird of Paradise, Wall of Roots, double Tempting Worm. I'm like, if I get to a second mana, I'm on the play. I don't think Lanny can mathematically win the game.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's back up there. I can't race double Tempting Worm, but it would just force me to kill them because I had a good draw. I had active Lavamancer by turn 3, right?
Yeah.
So
but
that was like
actually went a while because I eventually did draw a Wall of Roots to defend myself, but I was always
you drew a basic forest. Just not on turn 2.
2 land drops.
Yeah. You drew basic force eventually, and then you went Tempting Worm, and my battlefield was like full of Jackal Pups, and I actually had to like. Well, my battlefield was like, I think that battlefield was Grim Jackal Pup or something, and so I had to like team up a Grim and bolt the first worm, and then get in for 2, and I was like, oh, that didn't feel good. That worm just gained 5 life, right, or gained net 3 life, and then you played another one, and I'm like, I'm not burning that. I was just like, that can hang.
Yeah,
like,
so
we're switching gears.
Like my remaining cards were like multiple duress and a survival. So even if you could deal with the first 2 Tempting Worms that were just in my natural draw, I could have gotten the last one. That's so I thought, look, I didn't feel good when you have a keep 1 land hand and it's a Land War Waste.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of gamble on that Bird of Paradise.
No, I mean, if you top deck Forest, it becomes a great hand. And like compared to a 5-card hand, you just wouldn't have the resources. Like it's a huge deal that you need. Like, I mean, both players need resources, right? I kept like a horrible 7 in our later test games because I just simply had the mindset. It was like, I can't really give up a resource. Maybe I can, but that's another discussion. So anyways, I won the match 2-0.
And then we played like 7 games.
We played 4 more games, and
you won all but one.
I won. Yeah, I won 3 of them. And what I thought was there's basically what I walked away with was a couple things. One was that, and I think this is personally, I think this is an enormous burn unlock, and I think that I feel it with like not the most conviction in my entire body. Like in levels of conviction, for Sulfuric Vortex main deck is like, you're doing it wrong if you're not doing that. I'll die on that hill. This one is like in the phase of like, I need to play it to see it. But this take is never board out Jackal Pup except for against Oath of Druids, and then even then probably still have Jackal Pup. And the reason is actually very simple. So we very quickly were taking Jackal Pup out against Wall of Blossoms. We were just like, Jackal Pup versus Wall of Blossoms is a horrible matchup.
Wait, so you still want to keep in Jackal Pup against Elves and regular the Rock?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely against Elves. Like that's the most evident, and I'll actually explain to you the inverse of that, which is because I played Elves this week online. But against regular the Rock, because they don't have roots, you're even more paid off, right? Like Pernicious Deed is just like too slow to matter, right? So anyways, let me unpack it. So basically, Jackal Pup versus Wall of Blossoms, bad matchup, right? The problem is Mog Fanatic and Ball Lightning are also really, really bad matchups against Wall of Blossoms. And the only way that you can break the asymmetry here of your opponent's 0-4 is to have the maximum amount of power. You can't have half measure. So like it seems so obvious for you to be like, oh, well, you can play Mog Fanatic and attack, and if they have the Blossoms, you do like 1 extra point of damage. And like my point is just like, okay, well, if you have Jackal Pup, you can attack, and if they have the Wall of Blossoms, like you're really basically in a very, very similar spot. But
nobody's advocating taking out Mog Fanatic, and also
no.
Like you just use Mog Fanatic to kill Bird of Paradise in multiple games.
That's true, but that's also that is also like don't get me wrong, that's upside, but fundamentally the issue is like your ability to make this Mog Fanatic do something important is like still contingent on your opponent playing Birds of Paradise. And then if they just have a draw with a bunch of walls, you're in the same spot, right? You just have a Jackal Pup that deals 1 damage instead of 0. And that's even debatable. And then multiply that with all the times that you draw Ball Lightning, right? And so if your opponent has two walls in play and you have Ball Lightning, then your Ball Lightning just gets eaten, right? You can't even do anything. But if you have a Jackal Pup and a Ball Lightning, then all of a sudden you can punch through,
guarantee certain amount.
You can get damage in, right? And so let me preface this with like, none of these scenarios are what I would call like the ceiling on Jackal Pup, right? They basically are expressing the worst thing that can possibly happen, which is that your opponent has a bunch of walls. But the thing is, like, what else are you putting in your deck?
You create range. The thing is, I totally respect when we talk about this, because you create range. I actually would just, and I don't know, maybe you're right. I haven't put enough thought into this yet. And also, you made the point that your version just doesn't have enough good cards anyway.
Well, like, no version does, right? So the only difference between my version and another version is that you would have Lava Dart. So it's like,
Lava Dart isn't even particularly good. I mean, it just kills Bird of Paradise.
It also kills Bird of Paradise. So it's like you open up your hand, it's like Mog Fanatic, Lava Dart, and then they go turn 1 nothing, turn 2 roots, and you're like Lava Dart.
I am super vanilla on Lava Dart against any deck that has Tempting Worm.
Yeah.
Like when I invented Tempting Worm, the reason I invented it was I sided in a bunch of Lava Darts and stuff for Dave Kaplan's
I actually have to caveat you there.
For Dave Kaplan's
there was a European Tempting Worm Hermit deck in 2022 on TC decks, the oldest entry.
Well, when I invented Tempting Worm, I invented it because
it's like Edison Tesla if Tesla was or if Edison was like actually a year late, but that's fine.
Well, yeah, so I sided in Lava Dart because Dave Kaplan had
Hermit Druid,
and then he just cast Tempting Worm against me, and my hand was all Lava Dart, and he killed me.
Yeah.
And so that resulted in me inventing Tempting Worm.
Yeah.
So anyway, the thing that I would counter, and this isn't even a disagreement, it's kind of more of an observation, is that I guess in the ideal state, but you're never in the ideal state in this matchup, right? Because it's kind of strategically kind of a shitty matchup. that like you're turning your deck from a deck of like 38 to 41, individually good cards into a combo deck, right? So you're just like, okay, if I get Jackal Pup and Ball Lightning together, then they create this sort of synthesis.
Well, let's back up and just say that that's if and only if your opponent has like an untenable amount of walls and Tempting Worm, because in every world where your opponent doesn't have lots of walls,
you just get them for 4.
You crush them, right? And like
you get them for 4.
Lava Dart,
I guess in this match,
Lava Dart isn't going to do anything. So to be more specific, I board out 3 Seal of Fire for 3 Earthquake, and I just keep pups in. So like you would basically say,
why is Earthquake better than Seal of Fire? Just because you can do 3 instead of 2?
Yeah,
you cast Earthquake in one game, you did 3, including 3 to yourself, and you won because you top decked to Ball Lightning.
Well, I had range there because I just needed, because I had Barbarian Ring, so I just needed Ball Lightning or
a Fire Blast would have won it also.
Yeah, right? Fire. Well, actually, I might have not had two mounts. Something would have won.
Yeah,
I think my range was like Fire Blast, Bolt, Ball.
Oh no, I was pretty sure I had the kill on board, right? And you just drew a Ball Lightning and killed me, right? So so the thing that I would say is, that might be good. It's just not something that's intuitive to me to turn my deck of all individually useful cards into a combo deck.
Well, there's I'll add the Earthquake thing is just like there is a world in which like I can team up, like if your board is like actually wide, I can like team up an attack and like a Grim Lavamancer activation to get like a board wipe, if that matters, which I can't imagine it does all that often. So it's just a bad Blaze most of the time, but sometimes it's a Blaze plus value.
The only Earthquake you cast. Okay, I'm just saying, you won the game.
Mike, you're asking me why I boarded in. I'm telling you that these are the things I'm thinking about, not just what happened.
It didn't look very good.
Yeah,
right? Like,
it was a bad Blaze in the game that I cast it, but in my imagination, it's bad Blaze plus like random other situations where I can like sometimes take power off the board, right?
Yeah. So but in the game, it felt really good for me because all that happened was you cast it, did 3 points of damage to yourself, took out an irrelevant creature, like it killed something, but it just wasn't that relevant, and left me a bird and a Tempting Worm. And I'm like, all good. This Tempting Worm's gonna get there. It didn't get there.
Yeah.
So
this turn cycle was pretty cool because basically I had once again sort of forgotten what you were capable of. So like I like shipped, I had 2 Mog Fanatics on the battlefield. That was what I was giving up with Earthquake. So it was a really bad Earthquake, but you were at 11 7. You were at 7 because I did 3 plus 2 down to put you down to 2, right? So I tap out. I have 2 Barbarian Rings.
No, it wasn't that low. You had to draw a powerful card to kill me.
Well, no. Then you got Baloth, and then you sack Baloth right away to put you on 6, right? So then you go from 2 to 6 the next turn, and you have battlefield against no battlefield, right? And then I'm on top decks with Barbarian Ring, and you're at 6, right? So I just need I had 2 Barbarian Rings, so I just needed either 2 or 4 damage depending on if I had 2 mountains and 2 Barbarian Rings or whatever. But I was just sorry. We had 2 turns after this because my top deck right after I cast Earthquake was Grim Lavamancer. Then that puts you in check. That's what got interesting. So at Grim Lavamancer, I go end step, bring you down to 4. So that I have a Grim Lavamancer on the battlefield and maybe that was my last Barbarian Ring. So I just needed like Burn Spell off the top or like whatever. I don't know. Anyways, all that matters is it was a bad Earthquake, but like the 3 damage mattered.
No, fair. I'm just saying. I'm just saying from my side, man, it felt pretty good.
Yeah, because you were like, you went from like, I'm probably losing to this game, just like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I could possibly not lose this game. But I think I want to address the first thing that you said, which I think is very, very obvious, right? Which is just like your deck contains 4 Mog Fanatic, 4 Grim Lavamancer, and 4 Jackal Pup, which ostensibly you want to be on the battlefield. Why are you boarding in Earthquake? And my answer to that is
take 3.
It's just like, I don't know. It might kill your opponent. And like, that's the only objective, right? I'm not asking you to like cast Earthquake the turn that you draw it. I'm just saying that if you draw Seal of Fire, it's probably doing less damage.
One of the games I dressed you and your only spells were Earthquake and you
Fire
had like
Blast.
Yeah, and I'm just like, well, this is awful, and I still lost. So, these are the things I'm going to say this, and I want to preface this by saying I don't have a horse in the race. If you think I'm cheering for the black-green deck over the red deck, I don't know what you've been listening to for the last 2 years. I don't have a horse in the race. but these are the observations I make. 3 observations. One, we did play like 6 or 7 games.
6.
And
5 and
6
1
games. And I don't think I ever drew in the fat part of the curve. Right?
Yeah, like a
regular hand,
rock,
right?
Like
right?
a rock solid hand.
I had one hand that I looked at it and I was just like, the burn deck is mathematically incapable of beating this.
And that was the one game you won. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, I can't lose this game. When I looked at the hand, you want to let me go first? I'm like, no, but
yeah. You're like so. Yeah. Preface: so we played 6 games. That. We played 1 game 1. The rest were game 2s.
Yeah,
and then Mike had play like in every game 2, and then he draws his hand. He's like, I got this, and I'm like, I'll take play then, and he was like, no.
So I guess I have 3.5 observations. So the second observation is I had 0 hands. So this is part of why I think that I didn't draw anything in the fat part of the curve, where I naturally drew 2 walls. Right, the deck has 8 walls and potentially multiple tempting worms. I had 0 hands that I drew more than 1 wall. And then the third thing is, and I think this is an important part of it, because like you can read this in one hand and just being like, I got unlucky. But on the other hand, you should be like, okay, as the burn player, this has to be part of the strategy that you're seizing in order to maximize your likelihood of winning. My mana draws sucked in almost every game. And the immediate observation that you can make is the mana in this deck sucks. It has 20 lands.
Yeah.
4 of them are
markable.
Right? Like,
Oh yeah, 4 of them are Llanowar Wastes. Then you have 4 birds, which are marketable, and then you have Well of Roots, which is amazing.
You can just draw Swamp, and like the deck is actually forest hungry. So like the thing is, I didn't draw any hands in the fat part of the range, but like there's just so many things that you can exploit as the burn player if you kind of know like which nooks and crannies to go through. Like I think you're right. We're just like, okay, Mike's hand kind of isn't perfect, or maybe it sucks or whatever. I'm just gonna jump down his throat, right?
Yeah.
Like. And that's maybe the way that you got to play it.
My life is pretty simple, right? Which is just that, like, all that matters is actually what I think is interesting is that I have access to all 3 gears, right? So I can kill you because my draw is amazing. I can make sure that you don't kill me, and if you're gonna start killing me, it's gonna take you about 3 or 4 turns. So then I can just draw like I can just top deck and kill you. So.
But in the game that I won, you're just like, why don't you just play Tempting Worm here? And I'm like, but why should I? Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. That just creates variability. If I just play this way, I'm always going to win.
Well, I thought it was interesting because the worst thing that can happen if you cast Tempting Worm in that spot is I put in, 3 Sulfuric Vortexes and then bolt down your Tempting Worm.
Isn't that pretty bad for me?
It's never going to happen.
Yeah, but the way I played it, I was like, I'm just going to draw 3 cards a turn and put out Ravenous.
Yeah, no. I knew my hand. I knew my hand, right? So I was sitting there, I'm like, I lose if you play Tempting Worm, but you didn't know my hand. So, but okay. So this is what I have to say about that. One is just that the ideal draw for you're starting with the ideal draw has basically hits 4 land drops. Even if you have Wall of Roots, you kind of have to hit 4 straight land drops, right? And ideally they're basic lands. Am I right? Like this
is a horrible start. I don't know if you're right. This is a horrible starting point for a deck that has 20 lands. Like 2 weeks ago, we were just arguing about whether or not I should take out Wall of Blossoms, and I'm like, you can't take out the Catalyst cards. The deck has no freaking land.
Wall of Roots in the We got to keep our Roots and Blossoms separate. So okay, that is my point, right? So like. Fundamentally, we both went into this. Well, I actually didn't go into it because the data came out and it was like, oh, burns the dog to survival, and then Fran is just like, oh, burns the dog to survival, and I was just like, I just don't lose to survival decks with my burn deck. Like I can't do it. I can't physically lose to survival deck playing burn. I would love for somebody to prove me wrong, but it just didn't happen.
A lot of the games.
My round 2, by the way, was against HFEB, and we all know how that went.
Come on, man. I mean, like,
it's a survival deck.
Right. Here's the thing. The main difference between this deck and like the Rock is that like this deck has so many basic lands, or what I should say is this deck doesn't put a bunch of Volrath Stronghold, Treetop
Village is a big one, yeah,
and Dust Bowl into play. And so because it doesn't do that, you lose an angle.
To be clear,
HFEB, you're just like look at your opening hand, and you're like, oh,
to be clear,
start on 4.
If I was playing against the like 10 or 12 non-basic land deck with this, I think I just board out 4 Seal of Fire for 4 pop, and once again I leave in Jackal Pup.
And like I think people are so greedy about pop. If you can get 4 damage with a pop, it's not the lottery, but it's just like it's great.
Well, you win the game, so it's it's like it's not like there's a difference between winning the game by 8 and winning the game by 0. Like it's you just win the game is all that matters. So basically our paradigm was survival rock's favored, and I was just like, yeah, I mean, I get it. Like you've got a bunch of you have 8 walls in your deck, and I was just like, I don't know, I don't think it, like, you know, the other deck has sometimes it has 6 walls and 4 Ravenous Baloth main, and I was like, I don't have a problem with that deck, so like why would I have a problem with this deck?
Yeah,
it's like, well,
that's a weird statement. The reason that I was ever railing against the Rock and Pre-Moderners is because the 4 Ravenous Baloth 8 wall deck
yeah, it was like it still doesn't beat burn. But setting that aside, right? But that was my point. It was just like, well, that doesn't beat burn, and it's like, okay, well, the difference is we have like Tempting Worms. Like, okay, that kind of beats burn, but like, you know, like does it?
I thought it was like the combination of lots of walls, which we haven't seen in years, a low amount of non-basic lands, and the Tempting Worms all together. I thought were going to create a bad situation.
Your deck became a little bit somewhere between like a little bit to a medium bit worse against Ball Lightning because you have no instant speed removal to Ball Lightning.
Yes, it doesn't have any removal at all. It has 1 Bone Shredder.
Yeah, I was Bone Shredder and Massacre, right? So like if I draw a Ball Lightning, I just cast it. But here's the better thing. So I was in a spot, I have Ball Lightning in my hand and Sulfuric Vortex. And like, normally I'm thinking like, oh, I'm going to wait for my opponent to be tapped out to cast this Ball Lightning. And instead I was just like, whenever I cast this Ball Lightning, it's getting in. So let's just cast Sulfuric Vortex and get the damage started.
Oh, I really wanted you to cast Sulfuric Vortex in that situation. You were on this. I'm like, oh, I can answer this. Like, that's good. I'm like,
but the thing is, it just doesn't. On my side, it doesn't matter, right? So whether or not you have an answer to Sulfuric Vortex, you can probably find an opportune time to answer it. Like, obviously, I could wait for you to tap out, but like most of the time, I think you're like passing with mana up because you want a survival. Maybe whatever.
That actually was the Earthquake game because I thought I was going to win that one.
Yeah,
and then you ended up winning with top deck Ball Lightning,
right?
Which I again can't kill because my deck has
because you can't kill an instant speed. So that's something that Classic Rock can do that Survival Rock can't. So anyways, I'm just like adding all this up in my head, and I'm just like, I don't know that I mean, if it is favored, maybe it's like 55, you know, like if it doesn't even feel favored, maybe it's 50. And we played 6 games, and they're including post sideboard, the most important games, and it was 5-1. And you're like, well, each game something wrong happened, but we're also collecting data, right? I thought we were results-oriented thinkers now after a long discussion in the Discord about how...
I at no point am I arguing the outcomes.
No. I understand.
Saying, like, but if we're gathering data, I think it's important to know
yes.
These are things that, like, I didn't draw any hands in the fat part of the curve.
No.
Like,
well, that's the thing is like, so let's build the curve. That's the problem, right? So the curve... This is what I want to drill down into, which is just like, what is the expectation for the draws? And we can just do this, right? We can just hop into Moxfield and we can just do sample draws. And then we can just be like, how many times do you actually get forest, another land, wall,
and 2 walls in the first 4
2
turns.
walls.
That's what I'm thinking.
And then maybe still more lands, right? Because if your hand is only 2 lands and it's just walls and you don't draw the 3rd land, or like your hand is 2 Llanowar Wastes and it's 2 walls, it's like, you know, so you start and you're like, oh, this is going to happen about like 30% of the time, but then you have to like take out 2% and you have to take out 1%, and all of a sudden there's 20% left, and then it's just like, all the other hands, are they mulligans? And it's just like, okay, so now you
mulligans. They're just not in the fat part of the curve, right?
Okay,
the other thing that
let me actually stop you there. They might be mulligans, right? Because if you draw the hand and it has no walls, and it's just like Birds of Paradise and like whatever, or it's like it needs to be like exactly 4 lands and 3 spells, and some of the spells need to be walls, because if it's 2 lands, it might be a mulligan. Obviously, all the 1-landers are mulligans. Obviously, all the 1-lander Llanowar Wastes are probably mulligans. Obviously, you're allowed to gamble. Etc. So like when you're building out the range, like I understand that you're saying the fat part of the range because you're like what you're looking for feels like it should happen quite often, which is just like lands and spells with one of the spells including something that I have 11 copies of, right? 8 walls and 3 worms. But once you actually start breaking down, it's like, okay, well, what are the fail states? Now all of a sudden maybe it's only going to happen, like maybe you think in your head it's going to happen 50% of the time, and then now actually in reality it only happens 35% of the time. And that the stuff that's not in the 35% of the time is an actual disaster. And then all of a sudden your outlook starts to shift. And I'm not saying that it's shifting from your outlook is 70%, it goes down to 0. It's probably more like your post-board outlook might be 60%, and in reality it just comes down to 50.
So I would say the thing is, like, it felt like we played a lot of games, especially since you won all but one of them, right?
Right.
But the other thing I'd say isn't just that I didn't draw these wall hits. Like, I had actively bad mana in at least 3, if not 4, of the 6 games.
Yeah, but the deck has bad mana, right?
But you're right. The deck has bad mana, right? but I got.
You keep saying the fat part of the curve, and the more you add
the bad mana.
Okay, this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, right? You're just like, it's the fat part of the curve, and I'm just saying, it's like. It might just be the top of the curve that you're describing, and then the rest of the curve is just like really.
It's just like every Dreadnought player feels entitled to hitting their first 4 lands, no matter how many lands.
18 land deck, yeah.
Right. So I have a 16 land Dreadnought deck. I'm hitting my first 4 lands because I got cantrips. And sometimes your cantrip is an impulse and a flash of insight, and you got 1 island, buddy. Right? Like that's just. You're just not entitled to your first 4 lands, or maybe you are mathematically.
You are, yeah.
In individual games, you're just like, it doesn't always work out,
I mean, I would, if I'm on the play with island opt, nothing else, I've got a bad feeling. But if switch that opt out
round words, let me tell you.
Yeah. But if I switch that opt out for a portent, I'm just like, I'm raging if I don't see an island. And granted, you probably don't see an island about like 20% of the time or something. So,
I mean,
maybe 15.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I've just reminded, I think Seth Burns said this like 25 years ago. He's just like, that's why we play the games instead of just running the percentages. I was at Movie Club on Wednesday, and I like actively wasn't watching the Cavs Rockets game, and it was just like 1 minute to go, and John's just like, let's put the game on. Game is tied, right? And then the Rockets go up by 2, and so the game's about to be over, and they flagrant foul Darius Garland on a 3. Not just foul, flagrant foul him. And that means that the Cavs are going to get 3 free throws when they're down by 2 with 2 seconds on the clock, and they're going to get possession back. And it's so like Lan's brother and I were just like running the numbers and be like, what is the percentage the Cavs are going to win this game while they're down by 2? And it's like got to be north of 90%, because I'm like, Darius Garland is one of the top 5 free throw shooters in the league. All he has to do is hit 2 of 3 and they still get possession back. He misses the first 2, which only happens maybe 1 out of every 200 times, right? Like, it's insane. Like, and then they end up losing the game because like it just becomes a regular game at that point. And I just, in hindsight, I'm like, that's why you play the games.
Yeah, that's why. Why you play the games is good advice.
Oh, let me tell you.
But that supports what I'm saying.
A free throw shooter. 2 weeks ago, he was at 94%.
See,
by the way, 87% is excellent, right? But he was 94% 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, all right. So you're supporting my claim though, right? Because like you're basically saying you've got a curve, and I'm just like, I'm saying I've got 5-1. So
so yeah, it's it's weird. I think like Lan always makes fun of me by saying this, and I feel it's probably true what he's saying, kind of. But I would say about it, he often says like, you feel like when you win it's skill, but when you lose it's luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But the thing is like, yeah, because I'm executing on strategy. Like last night, the Cavs played a perfect game. They shot 50-40 and had only 5 turnovers, and it ended up losing by 3 because the Sixers, who are one of the worst teams in the league, have lost 7 in a row and were not playing with and had 4 rotation players out last night, literally shot 60% from 3 on guarded shots, right? Like Cavs are playing excellent defense, and like these 3-pointers just keep falling. Like you can't plan for that. Like it's like gear 1 when you have both hands tied behind your back. There's no defense against a donkey throwing up 3-pointers that just keep going in.
I've got and our non-poker fans are going to hate this analogy, but I thought this is really interesting, and I haven't cooked it down, but I thought it was interesting, right? So, we're playing Hold'em. You've got flop comes out, and it's one player has the straight flush draw, right? So the board is like, 4-5 of spades, 7 of diamonds, and you're holding 7-8 of spades. So any spade, any 9, any 3 makes the nuts. And your opponent has pocket fours. So they have the nuts too. They've got bottom set. And so both players are sitting there thinking, how do I get more money into this pot? Right?
But one of them is wrong.
They're actually basically the same amount of right. So the equity is something like 46% against 54%. So the bottom set has edge. But given the just like how things are, like, both players are pretty happy to get it all in. And this is what you see all the time. Like, one of the most famous hands in poker is the Robbie, where she has Jack high, and Garrett Adelstein has the straight flush draw, but it's like 3-4 club. So he has 4 high, but he has a bunch of outs to the nuts, right? And they run the board twice, and he loses 150 grand and accuses her of cheating. And it's just kind of like, she hero called you with Jack high, like it's just like so. Anyways,
I don't think it's like that. So in my
let me at least close the loop on it. Yep. So you understand what I'm saying? It's like both players have a strategically sound reason to get it all in, right? And I noticed this when we played the Burn versus Roxer matchup, because when you're the protagonist in the Burn thing, you're like, I play to my outs. And when you're the antagonist in the Burn thing, you're like, you top deck ball lightning. And I'm just like, yeah, like, why don't I get to play to my outs, right?
I don't think that I was, I don't know, accusatory or whatever. I actually think that
well, okay. You said multiple times.
I couldn't really execute a lot of the time, but in the games that I was executing, I was putting you in spots where you had to play to your outs, right?
Right.
That's like mathematically not
right, but
you're not favored.
So
right?
that might not be true, but basically you said, you basically said multiple times throughout the playtesting match, it's like, well, you won because you draw this card, and every single time I was like, well, I put 4 of them in my deck. I don't know what you want me to ask. I did everything right, and I was rewarded. Like maybe. What happened was I did bet my straight flush draw, and maybe I had 46% and you had 54% and I hit. Like, maybe that's a good analogy for the situation. But the overarching theme is, once again, we said it, you were like so hyped when you beat Pit Rack with your burn deck. You're just like, oh, I was playing SSW, I was on my last turn, I drew the burn spell, and I told you this. I told you the same thing, and it's always true. The card is designed to explode. Like, if you're just like winning with a bunch of cards in hand, like your opponent probably is just crushed. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, your bread is buttered, right? You win X% of games by a mile, but the only reason any burn player is successful in this format is because they get the money in and obviously you're always all in every game because you can't fold, but they get the money in as good as they can possibly get it. So whether or not they're disadvantaged in a particular situation doesn't matter, right? All that matters is that the burn player is maximizing their equity, and that is no different from what you're doing. Also, you're also maximizing your equity, and those equities are clashing up against each other. And the fact that the draw came out, it doesn't matter. Each player played the best that they can, and we can argue whether or not once before the cards got dealt, if you started with advantage. I think that's interesting, but like, assuming that we both played perfectly, it almost doesn't matter, right? Like, we're just running.
I think it matters a lot if you are intending to play burn at like a big tournament and you think Roxer is going to be one of the main decks you play against. I think that understanding how to win the matchup is a thing you might want to invest time in, right? However, like, I'm not going to become a Roxer main. So we're just like, oh, we have to like play more to learn. But I'm just like, I don't really care.
Well, no, I mean,
if my cards would come in.
If you feel like, if like the thing that I wanted to learn, right, was just kind of like, okay, let's play this until you get multiple draws that feel like they're good. And then we can analyze those draws and be like, are those draws like something that you can play towards? You have to mulligan towards them, like that kind of thing. Like, you might have to adjust your strategy, right? So like the Roxer deck probably keeps any hand with lands and spells. Against the burn matchup, maybe they just go to 5 looking for basic lands and a wall.
The one thing that the third observation I was going to make is, though, I don't know that there are hands that you're on the play that you from the burn side feel like you always win. But like, I looked at my opening hand, I'm like, you're never going to win this game. And I think that the Roxer probably has a bunch of hands like that are uncrackable by burn.
Yeah. So
but the opposite might not be true. I've
talked about that often as nut advantage. And I think burn has nut possibilities just because, like, I'm pretty happy when I have 3 lands and a Sulfuric Vortex in my hand. Like the rest, because the rest is going to figure itself out.
It's way worse in a sideboarded game. Like, because I obviously have all 4 of my I had all 4 my naturalizes in against you. So the kind of PS on this is I played against Burn again in the 4th round, and I won the match 2-0. And I only had 3 naturalized in the sideboarded game against Chris. But I didn't think he had 4 Sulfuric Vortex.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like we've talked about on this podcast, you have advantage by being the first order threat. Like you have the threat beats the answer, right? So even if the floor of this Sulfuric Vortex is that it gets naturalized, like naturalized isn't in your like excited to draw at hand, right?
No.
You draw it, and you're like, God, I hope this finds a target. I draw Sulfuric Vortex, and I'm just like, sick. The worst thing that can possibly happen to me is that I trade 1 for 1 and probably still deal 2 damage. Like, yeah, that's excellent.
But one of the things in a sideboarded game to me, especially playing against you, where I know that at least in a sideboarded game, right? Obviously, I know also in a main deck game, but at least in a sideboarded game, you're going to have multiple Sulfuric Vortex in your deck, right? Like
But all that means is that you're happy to have naturalized in your deck. It doesn't mean like you're happy to always draw it. You still want to just draw it when it has a target.
Yeah, you want it to have context, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that one of the things that Sulfuric Vortex does is it limits my ability to just generate advantage, right? If you don't have Sulfuric Vortex and you have any other combination of pretty good cards, I can just generate infinite advantage, which is actually how I won the next round, right? I got Genesis and I was in trouble. Like I was like at net 2 life, but I just gained 4 life a turn while laying land, right? And that was enough to not lose the game eventually, right? And if you're okay, I have like mono burn spells, right? If I get to the point that I'm still alive at like 5 lands and a wall of roots in play, you might not be able to win if all you have is like all these good burn cards. Similarly, if you're like, okay, I have these like fast attackers, right? You might not be able to win if I leverage my advantage to just playing a million walls and tempting.
Yeah. Well, so let me tell you what
Vortex changes the dynamic.
I completely agree, and this is what I think. I think that Burn is very happy to have Grim Lavamancer, Sulfuric Vortex, Ball Lightning, and Curse Scroll. So
Grim Lavamancer is awesome in this matchup because it's hard for me to kill.
Yeah, because you have no removal cells.
I could probably kill the first one.
So these are so I'm describing 14 cards that can generate good scaling advantage, right? And I think that's actually really relevant because not only are they 14 cards, they're 14 threats, right? So you have 11 answers, and Tempting Worm doubles as a threat. And honestly, I actually just don't count Survival of the Fittest here because you need so much right to happen before Survival of the Fittest becomes a card, right? You need to draw mana sources. Like you need to not be at a low enough life total. You need to be able
probably just don't play Survival on the second turn unless you had a bird and you naturally drew Squee. That's actually something that I'd say just do something else.
I experienced that a little bit when I played Elves this week because I was playing Angerless Elves, so I was just like, well, I gotta play my mana before I play my Survival. But
why did you play Angerless Elves?
We'll get into that later. Overall, I just thought I'm just kind of like pretty happy because again, at the end of the day, like being the deck with the threats is good, and having some pretty good threats is like really good. And once I take Seal of Fire out and I make the slight upgrade of turning 3 of them into Earthquakes, I'm just kind of like, I'll take my odds. Like, I don't think I'm going to win every game, every match, but like, I'm also hyped to be me. Like, I'm pretty like with this burn deck, like I'm excited to be me. And that leads me to my next topic, except for when I'm playing against Phyrexian Dreadnought, in which case I hate being me. So I'll talk about these.
I'm sorry that you feel that way.
I'll talk about these games really quickly. So, playing against SWB, belt match 3-0, both of us. SWB hasn't lost a game. He has the Rask Bible. He messaged me and was just like, "What's the deal with the Bible?" And was like, "You just donate to charity, and Rask gives it to you." And he's like, "Great. I should probably learn this deck before LobsterCon. If you can't beat him, join him. Like, just figure it out. Either you learn about the deck and beat it, or you play it yourself." So we sleeve up and we're just like, cool, odd or even, boom, I've got play. And I was just like, step 1 complete. Just like have a chance to win game 1.
That is very important.
So I open up my hand and I'm like, Jackal Pup, Mog Fanatic, 3 lands and burn spells. And I was like, oh, this is happening. I was just like, let's just hope SWB mulligans, right? SWB doesn't mulligan. I'm like, okay, we're
sorry,
we're a little down.
partner.
So Mountain Jackal Pup pass, SWB Island Portent pass, and I'm like, he's gonna miss. He needed that Portent. He's gonna miss. So I go, boom, top deck. My second draw for the turn was another Mog Fanatic. So I go Mountain, Mog Fanatic, attack for 2. And I was like, I can beat Dreadnought Vision Charm now, right? SWB, Island, Dreadnought, Stifle. I'm like, God damn
That's the only matchup where you want Stifle instead of Vision Charm.
Like, what? That's not fair. So I draw. I'm sitting here and I'm
was
like,
it fair when you buzzsawed through the second day?
I've like Incinerate, Lightning Bolt, and I'm just like, okay, I'm like counting in my head. I'm tapping the table, Michael J. Flores style. I'm like trying to figure out if I can attack with Mog Fanatics. You can't attack with Mog. It's net 4 damage either way. So I was like, okay, at least these Mog Fanatics are dealing damage. At least my Jackal Pup's going to get in for 4 total. But so SW's life total is actually just 18. I've attacked with Jackal Pup once. Like, and then, like, but I'm just like sitting there. I'm like, I can do this. I have 2 turns. He has to attack twice, right? So I pass, and he attacks, and I take 12. I go down to 8. End step, I go like Bolt. He's like resolves. I go Incinerate. He's like resolves. I'm like, oh, like what if his hand's no counters? But I don't have like Fire Blast.
Literally nothing. Right?
I don't have Fire Blast Bolt, and then so I just like draw my card. And I actually didn't have it, right? I didn't even have all the damage I needed. I drew Ball Lightning. And I was just like,
daze you?
I'm like, oh my God. I was like, there's no way. So I just play Ball Lightning. He's like, yeah, no, he's counterspell it. I was like, you don't have Vision Charm. You don't have, I was like, you don't port it into the Dreadnought. I was like, did you port it into the Dreadnought? He's like, yeah, I kept, it's like, you just have to try to hit Dreadnought. I was like, you don't, I was like, oh, yeah, whatever. I was like, I got this. We have 8 sideboard cards, 4 Overload, 4 Blast. Gonna figure it out. So sideboard game, I'm like sitting there, I open the hand, it's like Overload Pyroblast. I'm like, okay, I got this. And it's like, and then, we go back and forth. He goes for it on like turn 4. He's able to, he deals with some stuff. He goes for it on turn 4. I go Pyroblast. He goes Stifle again. And then I'm holding the Overload, but I have 1 mana left. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to pass the turn. Steven only has 1 mana up. I pass the turn. I go Overload. He goes Hydroblast. My draw for the turn was the second Pyroblast. And I was like, we did it. So I go like Pyroblast. And then he goes Gush. And then I was like, we didn't do it. And then he goes Resolved. And I was like, we did it. And then I was just like, great, I got this. I've got like 2 cards left in hand. I'm stuck on 2 lands, and I have nothing in play. I have like a Jackal, or I have like a Mog Fanatic or a Jackal Pup or whatever, and he just like plays Mistress Factory. And then so like we just like play like 20 more turns. He like starts animating his Mistress Factory and getting in, and I Barbarian Ring. I had like 3 lands. One of them's Barbarian Ring, so I Barbarian Ring the Mistress Factory because I have a Sulfuric Vortex in hand. I'm waiting to cast Sulfuric Vortex around days. I have 2 Fire Blasts and whatever, and then he just has combo with like. By turn 15, he's still at like 12, and he has combo with Dreadnought, Extra Vision Charm, Days, Counterspell, and I was just throw me off a cliff. I drew 4 sideboard cards. I was just like, this is so dumb. So, anyways, we're taking Price of Progress out of the burn sideboard, and we're just putting in, I have no idea, Mog Salvage. So we'll go 4 Mog Salvage, 4 Overload, 4 Pyroblast, or maybe like 2 Mog Salvage, 4 Overload, 6 Pyroblast.
See, you can't do that.
What if you can, though? What if you'll still win without Price of Progress? Question mark.
Oh, man. I just go back to when Metelsky beat Aaron in that finals. And, like, obviously they're both our friends, et cetera, et cetera. But, Lanny Rock beating Red is only a byproduct of Aaron having taken out all the cards that make the matchup good.
Yeah, and he punted the last turn. Sorry to remind you, Aaron.
So, like... if he just has the tools, it just never happens. I feel like if it's me and I feel like Dr. Surf and Surf is a prohibitive percentage of the metagame, I just don't play burn, right? I don't make it so my burn deck is just bad in all the situations that I want it to be.
I mean, who knows though, right? What if 64 card burn and and 71 card burn in the Dreadnought matchup is actually like the best way to approach the meta. So we're in
there's too many people in this format who are just going to play their burn deck, and you're just always going to lose to them.
It's fine. They're just going to lose to Dr. Surf and Surf in rounds 1 and 2, and then I get the pairing, bring in 11 sideboard cards, boom, beat that first guy. Next round, Dr. Surf and Surf again, lose game 1 again, but then 11 cards, go back in again, beat that
Dr.
guy,
Surf
boom.
And Surf every round.
We're 4-0.
Play a deck that's good against Dr. Surf
4-0.
and Surf that could also sideboard.
Who's our 5th round opponent? He pulls out his like little sheets. I'm like, that looks like a Bible to me. I'm like, I got this. Lose the roll, lose game 1. 11 cards going again.
This is the strategy.
Lose that one, okay? You can't win them all. But round 7 rolls around, and guess who it is? Brian Selden himself. Offer him the draw. He refuses. I'm like, okay, it's fine. Bad on you. Boom. Lose game 1 again. Landslide. He had it. 11 cards go in. This time, open up my hand. 4 Mog Salvages and 4 Jackal Pups. It's over. We're Monster Con champion.
They probably can't beat you if you draw 4 Mog Salvage.
That's why you put them in your deck, Mike. Okay.
What about Detonate, Lanny? What if we?
Just go away. At least Meltdown is good for the times that they go double shrimp on turn 2, right? Like you can have Meltdown.
I guess Meltdown is better against Kaplan because Kaplan always has 2 shrimp.
Yeah, Kaplan has 2 shrimp. So what you do is you cast Tempting Worm. Your opponent puts 4 Dreadnoughts on the table and sacrifice 2 of them to the other 2, and then you melt down. Tempting Worm.
Tell me what I should do. I'm like, my cart isn't big enough. I might have to pay for shipping or something. So I'm like, should I buy these Miri's Guiles? I shouldn't buy Miri's Guile, right? I couldn't find any Miri's Guile. Or to me, this is one of these situations where I buy Miri's Guile and then I find 4, right?
You should buy some Miri's Guile. You should buy. I need some thwarts. Can you buy 4 thwarts for me?
Thwart?
Thwart, yeah.
I don't know if they have the old thwart.
That was like another deck I want to talk about, but one deck at a time. So, timeline.
They have 3 thwarts. I'll buy them.
Yeah, ship it. How much are they?
$2.
Oh, that's as much as I paid for my Tempting Worms. I did find the order. I paid $2 for 1 copy and $2.24 for the remaining 3.
Well, I'm buying 16 $2.50 Tempting Worms.
#stonks. $worm.
My card is huge now because I put some stupid standard cards in there.
Oh, remove. Yeah, thank you. You can add them back after the podcast in shame, but I appreciate you.
How many standard decks do I need to own? That's really the.
I mean, knowing you is probably going to end up being all of them, but
I
want to talk about survival.
I didn't play any standard tournaments.
I want to talk about Angerless Elves.
I skipped the standard RCQ because it qualifies you for a modern RC, and I'm like,
obviously, everything about contemporary Magic is horrible. So,
did you see the freaking race car cards? They literally look like Pokemon.
I'm not talking about it. I'm not talking about it. So, I noted Elves Basher, right? I've talked about it time and time again. I'm just like, I just don't get you. I don't know what you see in her. Like, I just don't see what you see. Like, she's like, it's just like that. It's like that actress that everybody agrees is like tier 1, and they're just like, what? Like, what's going on?
Tier 1 in what way? As a performer or
as looks or performer, depending on how politically correct you want to be, right? So
no, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
So yeah, I'm just like, well, it's obviously it's like, or your friend's like dating somebody and you're just like, this is the best person ever, and you're just like, I don't see what you. Anyways, that Elves is that. So I'm just like trolling whenever I talk about Elves at this point, because all the stuff you hear is like, oh, Europeans got Elves on lock and like blah this, blah that. And I'm just like, whatever. I'm like, guys, like, just, you started top 8ing and winning fewer tournaments over time. That's kind of what I'm seeing. But regardless, I made the joke. I was like, oh, non-Europeans can't understand the deck. Mike Arnold, ships me his photo of Massacre, stunts on me with that. And then in another thread, he was just like, we were talking seriously about Elves, and I'm just like, you're the Elves deck, right? I was just like, you get paired against Replenish because you're 4-0. And like, that's what happens when you're 4-0. You get paired against Replenish. Like, what are you going to do? And he's like, well, Elves players need to be brave and cut anger and play Armageddon Elves. And I was like, that's very interesting. I was like, I'll just give it a try, because fundamentally, this entire time, I've always thought that Elves is a playable deck by the standards of like not like, you know, like it's roughly as playable as Grotog in my eyes, right? Like Grotog runs into basically as many or the same brick walls as Elves.
On a binary, they're both just playable. They're both good decks.
They're both fine decks. Like we're assigning good too liberally, right? Because like people will just be like, oh, it's a good deck, it's powerful. And it's like, well, it's not powerful if it doesn't win. Like, you know, I don't conceptualize like Magic the Gathering decks on just like whether they're powerful or not. Like I sort of do, where I'm just kind of like, okay, well, you have to have a minimum threshold of power, but after that it's all contextual, right? It's like Burn's, you know, maybe Burn's not that powerful, but Burn is just like, you know, it runs good against certain decks, or like, you know, whatever. And like Elves is contextually, it has a huge amount of power, but it's got just a bunch of brick walls that it runs into.
What is the name of the Contamination deck?
The name of the Contamination deck? It's just called Contamination. It's called Mono Black Contamination.
I can't find it on TC.
Or Contamination Prison. I'll ship you the deck pick afterwards, but you just need your Contaminations. You need your Tainted Packs and your Contagions. You need your Nether Spirits, obviously, et cetera, et cetera. You need. Do you have all your Skeletal Scryings? Can you pick up like 10 Skeletal Scrying?
I'll see if they have it. That's a good question.
Pick up 10 Skeletal Scrying. Pick up 10 Flash of Insight.
There's no Flash of Insight still.
What about Chain of Vapor? I need like 2 more Chain of Vapors. Anyways, promo code Flores.
I think I only own 1 Contamination. Oh, do I have 3 Bottomless Pits? I have neither Contaminations nor Bottomless Pits.
Well, you got to pick up your pits. Okay, back to Elves.
Okay. No. I found a 4th of Bottomless Pit and a 2nd Contamination.
So anyways, I basically mushed together a lot of things that I was always thinking about Elves. I think Elves should run 4 Deranged Hermits. You know, it's just like a good card if you don't draw survival. It's a good way to win the fair game. I just like took out a lot of the fun of 1-ofs. I just kind of was like, okay, whatever. I'm just going to like ignore some of these corner cases because like whatever, for science. I'm just like trying out a bunch of things. And effectively, I'm just like playing three Armageddon main deck, basically where the Tangle Wires are in any Elves deck. But I took out the Anger package, right? And I played a bunch of lands too, because I'm just kind of like, now I need white sources, and like I'm sort of like less of this like explosive. So I tweaked a lot of things. So don't get me wrong. Like I could have taken out a lot of the capability of the Elves decks. And then I beat Tide Combo or Tide Control and Blue White Control. And then I lost to Goblins, Dreadnought, Pawns of Oath, and Burn.
Those are the decks that Elves loses to.
Well, you're not supposed to lose to Dreadnought, but guess what? Sometimes they just have it.
What is supposed to?
Like, people are suggesting that you should play Elves if people are playing Dreadnought. And I'm just kind of like, I mean, it doesn't feel good. I was 5-0 in the PSS, and I'm playing against Smits in the last round. He wins the roll, and he beats me on the second turn in the 2 games that he wins, and I win the game that he didn't win on the second turn. Yeah.
That's Dreadnought.
Yeah, that's Dreadnought. So I will caveat this was like taking Tangle Wire out of your deck makes you a lot worse against Dreadnought in game 1, because there's nothing you can do besides like have 50 mana and biorhythm them, I guess.
Get a Nuktabi and cross your fingers.
Or you get a Tabby, exactly. Which costs, again, 17 mana because, you know, you need survival, you need whatever.
It's at least 4, right?
Yeah, it's 1,000. So those aren't very viable if you go like... If you are on the draw and they go Island Port and go, you go Elf go, they go Dreadnought go. It's like your next play better be Tangle Wire, because you're just losing the game if it isn't.
Even if it's Tangle Wire, it depends on their draw.
You might draw another Tangle Wire afterwards and just keep going, right? But they can daze the Tangle Wire. Like, it's just...
Dude, that's Dreadnought.
Anyways, so that's completely cooked. And I lost against Burn this entire time. They like played Goblin Cadet, and I was just like, okay, at least they're not playing Lanny Burn, right? I was just like, so the match starts, right? And they're like, hey, yo, Lanny. I'm like, oh, what's up? Like, which they had like a first name in their title. I'm like, which Steven is this or whatever? And he's just like, oh, you don't know me. And I was like, okay. And then, so we play the match, and the pilot's made some weird choices. He's playing Reckless Sly, basically. So he has Reckless Abandon in his Sly deck. So, whatever, narrowly lose game 1, and then I was just kind of like,
part of this story is good. I just want you to know.
This person's like a follower of my content, so maybe he's playing Force Sulfuric Vortex and Earthquake in sideboard, but also there was like Reckless Abandon. I don't think I saw Goblin Cadet. So anyways, next game, I win. Call the herd plan, like grindy plan works because they they don't get their value going. And then the next game, they just go turn 1 Goblin Cadet and they just kill all my elves. And Goblin Cadet does 8 damage. And that is why you keep Jackal Pup in against elves, because it'll just deal 8 damage a lot of the time. You described
a Goblin Cadet, not a Jackal Pup. They're completely different cards.
I mean, it just doesn't matter because Cadet was enough, right? Pup is better than Cadet in all scenarios, and he got there with Cadet.
Cadet against a deck with 21 drops.
I know. I was just like, why is that even still?
4 Wirewood Symbiote. I was like, why against him so bad?
I was like, why is that even still in your deck? And guess what? I just didn't have a battlefield.
Gotcha.
It's just I just got Goblin Cadet, and obviously he always has the out to just reckless abandon the Goblin Cadet.
Does Pit Rack always have Hypnotic Spectre?
No, it doesn't always. So, anyways, he gets me with a Goblin Cadet, and I'm just like, well, that sucks. I lost a burn. My sideboard. So again, my thinking was Armageddon's going to be good against burn, and it can be good against burn, but a lot of other stuff has to happen first, and just kind of whatever. I had the Call the Herd sideboard plan, whatever. Beating the blue decks was super easy. So granted, if you think your meta is all Tide Control and blue-white Tide Control or blue-white land still, you're just going to crush them with elves for the most part. But yeah, and then I lose to goblins because I drew a hand. I was like, oh man, I got this. My opponent goes turn 1 Skirk Prospector, turn 2 Goblin Sharpshooter. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, okay, now I have 1 out. That was horrible.
What's your out? You
Dreadnought we described.
In your deck.
My out was Swords to Plowshares because I had white mana. So I was actually drawing towards 3 Swords to Plowshares. It was interesting. I will give a huge props. Birchsoil Rangers is really good in the Elves deck. 1 or 2 copies, turning all your the 2/1 that draws you a card.
Gives your stuff haste also.
Yeah. It's super sweet, especially when your deck doesn't have access to haste. Anyways, don't cut anger from elves. And then I'm playing against Pawn's Oath, and I was just like, okay, I'm told that there's an option here. I'm like, they have Sphere of Resistance, which makes it impossible to play. Oath of Druids, which basically makes it impossible to play. I don't have haste, by the way, so I can't overwhelm an Oath of Druids.
You really have no way to do it.
And then meanwhile, they're my opponent Pyroclasm 2 elves, and I was stoked. I was they only 2-for-1 me with Pyroclasm. I've got a window into this game. It's well, guess what? I can never attack the fair way because they've got plenty of manland blockers. I can as soon as creatures get played, Oath of Druids comes down, and I can't do anything under Infinite Sphere of Resistance. So that was rancid. So I just had 4 somewhere between bad and supposed to be good, but felt bad matchups. Obviously, my deck was a lot worse because it didn't have anger, but even if I had anger, it didn't feel great. Anger obviously lets you play Druid Lyrist a little better. It lets you play Well-Wisher a little better. So those are all good things about anger, and obviously you can combo through Oath of Druids, but I was just man, my opponents just have all these things that just ruin my day all the time. I was just I think I might have been this was a bad sample maybe, but I was I think I might have been relatively accurate in my assessment of elves, which is sure, it's a powerful deck, it casts some powerful spells. I made it slightly less powerful, sure, but I went in with the expectation. I was I probably 4-2 with this deck, right? I probably just beat some decks that I'm supposed to beat, and then maybe I have a couple bad. No, I had 3 bad matchups and 1 supposed good matchup, and I lost. Just maybe I can't comprehend elves. Maybe I took inefficient lines. I could have survived better. All those things could be true. Armageddon certainly wasn't it. If it were me, I'd stick to Tangle Wire, Anger Wire, and cross your fingers. That's what I would say. Maybe some naturalized main deck. 2, 3, 4 naturalized main deck. Biorhythm.
What do you? I guess naturalized kills Dreadnought. One thing that I liked was BK was trying a version that had, what's the 1-mana charm?
Emerald Charm.
Emerald Charm. It's pretty cool. It untaps your Priest of Titania, and then also can deal with cards like Oath of Druids in the main deck.
Yeah. It untaps your Guy's Cradle too, so that's amazing.
The fact that it doesn't deal with Dreadnought is.
It is a little
a knock against if you're gonna go this direction, though.
I mean, you got to pick a battle basically. So I basically built this list, and I was I'm gonna try to beat Replenish, and it turns out beating Replenish is only 1/5 of the battle. It's just you also have to beat all these other scary monsters. So, anyways, my assessment of elves is gonna be relatively the same. beats all the decks that aren't like as powerful, I guess, and then loses to a bunch of like really, really good hosers, really like, sort of combo-y better stuff. And like you can fight them with Tangle Wire, but it really kind of like Tangle Wire is actually, I went a much higher on Tangle Wire now because like I really like that it's sort of reactive, sort of proactive. Like you're sort of not unhappy to draw it. So that's good with Elves. I think I could make a list that at least made myself a little bit happier. Like I really liked Four Deranged. I played Sylvan Libraries, which felt decent, but also was kind of overkill because I was just like winning the control matchup by a landslide anyways. Like Four Deranged just wins the control matchup too. So anyways, so that's Elves.
I think Deranged Hermit's really underrated in Elves. When I was playing Elves last, which is probably over a year ago at this point, I natural ordered for Deranged Hermit as my most common target, which is probably counterintuitive, right? People are, why don't you
just get the monster,
whatever. But like actually, Deranged Hermit was actually just what I wanted. It gave me 5 bodies to power up my Gaia's Cradle.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I think, I think Natural Orders like definitely helps the burn matchup. Like I don't hate it there. So like the final thing I just wanted to talk about was just like, man, this Dreadnought deck sure does beat a lot of decks that that are supposedly to beat it. Like, so I have been sort of saying it's beatable. You've said it's beatable, right? You're like, it's good. I mean, it's obviously the best deck, but it's good to have a best deck, right? Because you
mathematically have to have a best deck.
Yeah,
but you can't not have a best deck.
But you were saying it's nice to have a bogeyman, right? A format bogeyman means that you can play around it, you can play against it. And me and Raska have been on sort of like a regular campaign, just being like, this is all you got to do. You just got to play Goblins, you got to play Beatdown, you got to play Terrageddon, you got to play all these decks. And we got into it with BK. BK was like, I don't think Terrageddon beats this deck. He's like, I don't think Survival Madness beats this deck. And he didn't say Elves, but like from my experience, like, well, Elves doesn't really necessarily beat the deck either. Like I played against Ole way back, and I foiled his Tangle Wire, so he lost. And so we were just kind of like stacking all this stuff up, and I was like, I actually do think that maybe nothing really beats the deck. Like Grotog beats the deck, but like Grotog is just not the kind of deck that, I mean, Grotog is great. Don't get me wrong. And it's great against Dreadnought, but like the amount that it's good against Dreadnought is really, really hard to make the deck good against Dreadnought and good against other decks, because the more Meddling Mage you have, the better you are against Dreadnought and some other decks, but the worse you are against Call the Herd. And so like you really can't have your cake and eat it too, because just like by having this idiotic 2/2 in your deck, like you're just not a good beatdown deck anymore, and you're a prison deck, like a prison control deck. And then I honestly want to take it out of Grotog, but then now you become a good beatdown deck, but you get a lot of your edge in the Dreadnought matchup goes away. So like I don't even think Grotog is like an antidote. I would suggest people try it and play it. Although as we discussed, it seems that some people are struggling with matchups that you should be good. But yeah, I mean, there's so much about this metagame that is honestly interesting in like how ineffective they are. Like I put Armageddon in the Elves deck, and I was just like, is Armageddon a good card against any of the good decks anymore? Or just like it doesn't feel like it. It's like good against Replenish.
I think, even when you're talking about the balance between Meddling Mage and Call of the Herd, to some degree, isn't that just kind of inbred that like you personally are so bad against Call of the Herd, and you've warped our local universe to be more around, and maybe our local universe includes the online scene, around Call of the Herd.
Well, the Terrageddon,
isn't it so much of a deal everywhere else?
The Terrageddon deck runs 4, and the price is spiked to like, $25 for an Odyssey copy or something like that, right?
Really?
Yeah, if you have Odyssey Call of the Herds, they're like they might be 10 or 15. They're expensive though.
What kind do I have in this pile?
But
I probably just have the reprint.
But I will add that Meddling Mage is also really bad against Mishra's Factory, and it is also really bad against Powder Keg. Like losing Meddling Mage plus all of your Dryads to Powder Keg is really bad. And also you're just not a deck that can stifle the Powder Keg. So Powder Keg kind of rocks your world. So, and it's also, if you want to play Pyroclasm in your sideboard, it's also not good if you have Pyroclasm in your sideboard. It's okay because most of the time, if you're Pyroclasming, you're probably blocking with your 2/2, and like it doesn't really matter. But like overall, like Meddling Mage has a lot that's going against it and a lot going for it, so it becomes like a weird polarized choice. Call the Herd in the Grotog deck, same deal. It has a lot going for it, but it has a lot going against it. It's super polarized. Nimble Mongoose Worship, like all those little things. It's really hard right now. I spend my nights awake thinking about it. I'm like, how do I want to build the antidote to this metagame Grotog deck? And I'm just like, anywhere that I try to maximize on beating one deck that I think is important, like another problem arises. And what's nice is that you can forget about the Oath Ponza matchup because that deck is seemingly fully on the downswing and should continue on the downswing because it doesn't appear to really have any hope against Dreadnought. But also on the downswing is Goblins, which was another matchup that Grotog was like generally pretty happy with. So then you can maybe open up your sideboard to play no Pyroclasm, no Engineered Plague, but then you kind of like, you're really gambling then.
Man, you can't not play Engineered Plague. What kind of person are you?
I mean, it's tough. Like if you want your sideboard space, like maybe your plan against Goblins becomes Worship Counterspell? Question mark. And maybe
I don't hate that.
Maybe all the burn players become Lanny burn players and they Earthquake your Nimble Mongoose, and then you die because you don't have any creatures in play for Worship. I have lots of questions, but
I just think it's just too powerful.
Worship or
no
Dreadnought?
Engineered Plague.
Oh, Engineered Plague. I mean, it's powerful because its very presence makes it really hard for people to play decks that are bad against it, and as a result, not a lot of bad against Engineered Plague decks are popular right now. Like truly none, right? Like just on raw play rate. I mean, Elves is really popular online. I did have a mention that like Elves, Terrageddon, and Grotog are all overrepresented online, and they're all very expensive decks on paper.
What does a overrepresented mean to you?
Grotog is the 5th most popular deck in online play. So
that's probably pretty high.
Yeah. So in comparison to paper, right? So number 3, it goes Burn and Goblins. That's what we've come to expect from pre-modern, is that the red decks are great entry points and going to be very popular in a large sampling of the audience. But then you have Elves, which is 3rd, $1 trillion deck. Terrageddon, which is 4th, for Mox Diamond, not
pretty
cheap.
Expensive deck also.
Grotog, 5th, very expensive deck with Mox Diamond. Replenish, number 6, very expensive deck. Red Green Ponzo is number 7, also a Mox Diamond deck. And then, funnily enough, Mono Blue Dreadnought isn't cheap because Dreadnoughts are $125 right now. Is all the way down in like 8th or 9th place. But like, just on volume of games that are put in. So granted, this sampling, if one Elves player plays 1,000 games, it looks the same as like 10 different people playing it. But overall, it kind of feels like it's saying that in general, there's a little bit more action on the Mox Diamond, Guy's Cradle, and Parallax deck in comparison to paper play. Granted, this is just like a flat ranking. It doesn't actually show like meta share. So maybe they're all like 4% and the next one's 3%. It's not a big deal. But I think it's at least interesting that Grotog is 5th, Elves is 3rd, and Terrageddon is 4th. Like 3, 4, and 5 in popularity on those 3 decks is not my experience in paper play. Like I just don't see that much Elves, Terrageddon, and Grotog. Terrageddon's pretty popular in New York though.
Terrageddon is not right. I mean, right now, it just seems like Roxer is just the deck du jour right now. Obviously, it's actually taken a little while for Dr. Surf and Surf to be popular in New York. Like, as an example, I've never played it at a meetup. Right? Like, that seems like super weird.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, but I also think that, like, the deck came out, I think most people, like, I was yelling about this. I was like, you have to pay attention to this deck. Like, you don't have, if you're a competitive pre-modern player, you can't look away. And I think
know about this.
I think, well, people would know about it, but they probably just thought it was just like a Dreadnought deck. You know, there's like, what's the big deal? There's 4 different sideboard cards. Just kind of, who cares?
This is what I ordered. 1 Fluctuator, because I don't know where I own 4 of the old Fluctuator. I can't find the 4th one, and I'm sure I'll find it a second after this order comes in.
Oh, 3, you have to buy extra Necros.
Why?
Because it's going to be unbanned.
Why didn't you tell me while I was in the middle of this? 3 thwarts, 2
You're not
Llanowar
supposed to shop for cards during the podcast. We talked about
I
this.
needed to get these tempting worms before somebody bought them out from under me.
It's not like we're broadcasting live. It's not like people
So
are...
I got 2 Llanowar wastes. I need 2 more Llanowar wastes because like my Llanowar wastes are in the stupid Rockster deck, but I'm gonna make Artie's deck. I'm very close to making Artie's deck.
The Terravor one or the
the
junk?
one.
Because there's a junk... Artie has junk Terrageddon as well.
Oh, I was gonna make the
Terravor
one.
Breakfast, yeah.
And then so 16 tempting worms, 1 dragon breath, and then 4 spellbook vendor because they were only 99 cents. But
Spellbook is excellent to have in your collection.
spellbook vendor.
Oh, never mind.
You don't know what that is.
That's a standard
listener
card. I don't
of
need to
this
hear about.
podcast.
I don't need to hear about that.
I don't even need it. It's for like the 3rd variation of.
We're done talking about standard cards.
Okay. Anyway, so those are the cards I bought. I only got 3 thwarts. That's how many they had. No flash of insights were available. I actually just keep wanting to buy naturalizes because like I only own. It's weird. I only own like 5 onslaught naturalizes. One of them's Japanese, but like every deck has naturalized, so I need placeholder naturalizes.
I don't play enough green decks.
I mean, green is this. I mean, it's not the best. Obviously, blue is the best, but green's like the 2nd best, right?
I think green is excellent.
Red's very good. Green and white used to be very good. I think white's mid.
Oh, what? I wonder why that was. I wonder what cards you could cast in white before that you before. that you
White
can't
was
cast
really
now.
good once. Now it's got the best card, and then it's quality drop off.
Yeah,
you used
yeah.
to have 2 different cards at W that were very good.
The second
second one
best
doesn't
white
exist.
card. What's the second best white card? Is it
Meddling
just
Mage.
Disenchant?
Meddling Mage.
Meddling Mage? Okay.
What's the second best white card?
I accept. Meddling Mage is the right answer.
Disenchant is super mid because Naturalize exists. I think the second best white card is probably after Meddling Mage. It's going to be like Decree of Justice followed by Exalted Angel.
Yeah, something like that. And those are pretty bad in comparison to Lightning Bolt and
Yeah, I mean, like
and
what's
Gush
the best
and
red card is
Important.
Lightning Bolt. Yeah, the best red card is Red Elemental Blast.
right now.
Let's be honest. Right. No, so the best red card is Pyroblast.
Goblin Lackey's pretty good.
Second best red card is Red Elemental Blast, then Lightning Bolt, then Mog Fanatic, then Goblin. The fact that Goblin Lackey is like 6th on the list.
Goblin Lackey is not 6th on the list. You just put it 6th on the list because you just because it dies to the other card. You're like, oh well, you can Mog Fanatic this, so it can't be that bad.
I don't think
Goblin Lackey is like
not better than Mog Fanatic or Lightning
it's better
Bolt.
than Mog Fanatic. It is so much better than Mog Fanatic. Mog Fanatic. The only reason Mog Fanatic is good because it kills Goblin Lackey. So you want to be the Goblin Lackey, not the Mog Fanatic.
All right. Well, I think.
And the second best thing that a Mog Fanatic can do besides killing a Goblin Lackey is killing something that's supposed to block Goblin Lackey.
Goblin Lackey is very good. It's not. Better
I go
than
Goblin Lackey. You go Weathered Wayfarer. I'm like, that's nice. I'll play Mog Fanatic. Good job, Mog Fanatic. Now I'll put Siege.
Are we in agreement that Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast top the list?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty good.
The best blue card is Phyrexian Dreadnought.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was gonna buy like another set. I'm just like, oh, this is annoying. I have all of my Stifles and Tides in my Andy Levine deck right now. I'm just like, I'll just buy a second set and make Dr. Surf and Surf. Stifles are like $28.
Yeah, Stifles are expensive as fuck.
Like I'm like, I don't need a second set of Stifles. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I own 4.
Yep.
Moving cards between decks is the worst.
It is, but you should do the Andy Levine and just keep all your stuff in the same sleeves, and then
Yeah, so my problem is I have like 3 different kinds of sleeves.
Yeah, you have
in
so
rotation.
many sleeves, but we should get a sleeve sponsor for this podcast now that we tripled the price of Tempting Worm.
Yeah, but I have like I think I have
market buyout.
16 active decks right now. So
That's pretty
they're
impressive.
actually built.
All right. Mark Vogt has a parfait list I've been playing with. I might make a video on it. That's why I need the thwarts. It's a scroll rack deck. It plays Predict. That was pretty cool. Keep your eyes out for that.
I invested, I do not know how much money. I don't remember. More than $200 in this stupid mono green deck. It's not going to be good. I'm annoyed with myself.
It's fun. It's a fun deck.
People can't see me rolling my eyes. Everything's fun. I the one time I ever played Mono Blue Dreadnought, I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I played 8 games that night.
Yeah. That's fun.
Do you know how many turn 2 combos I had?
16.
I played 8 games.
Oh yeah, sorry. 8.
7.
7. Oh, okay. It's tough. Yeah, I think that you know the joke about you're telling me a shrimp fried this rice. I think this is a shrimp fried format.
I mean, we can't. I don't want Dreadnought to be banned. It's weird because Dreadnought is like Broadway musical theater or comic books. It is the wholly American experience. They're just like, what is America? I mean, ask me what America is like. Broadway musical theater, comic books, baseball, right? Like these are the things that are American. What is pre-modern? Stifle Knot, right? There was no historical extended format had Stifle Knot. The card didn't work that way. Like it is the experience of pre-modern, and it is the bad guy against whom we all rail, And so I think like it's good in part because most people, like mathematically, most people just choose to do something else because the beautiful part of our format is that people want to do different things.
Yeah. And look, sometimes SWB doesn't find the Dreadnought with his port. Sometimes he sends those 3 back, he shuffles it up, he draws a card on my upkeep, he draws a card for his turn, and he just passes back against Jackal Pup Double Mod Fanatic.
I mean, it's just playing against the 17 Warriors, man. If you play perfectly, you can win. But if you give them any amount of purchase, they just go on a 20-0 run against you. That's what Stifle Knot is. Yeah. Right? Like I just didn't use my sadistic hypnotist against Kaplan, and then he killed me a few turns later. Right? Like I'm like, everything's going right. My strategy went off. I'm like, it didn't go off well enough.
I think the big thing is really the lack of brick walls. Is that you really can't play a deck that in like game 1, like what deck in game 1, like it has to be Meddling Mage.
No. Pit Rack and Contamination Lock both raffle stomp the Dreadnought decks. And it's not close. Like the other, like the bad, like Hypnotic Spectre creature decks raffle stomp Dreadnought in game 1. Like it's embarrassing how bad Dreadnought is against these decks with
is that the answer? So
I'm literally like I'm just like buying.
So it's Lobster Con time, baby. And you're just like, listen, as soon as I win 3 rounds, it's going to be Dreadnought City. So you're going to sleeve up your trusty Pit Rack deck.
If you're telling me that the red decks aren't good anymore, Pit Rack starts to smell a lot better.
Okay.
So it's not a bad deck. That's the thing. Like Andy and SWB both played mono black decks in the last year of meetups. They're like, this deck was pretty good. I only lost in the finals, right? Like, and so I'm thinking about this. I'm like, well, if red is bad, then like, why is Pit Rack like just not one of the best decks? It's great in a lot of these, like straight up great. A deck with like, I don't know about Chain of Smog or whatever, but like tear up your opponent's hand, and you can. The other thing is, if you look like Dr. Surf and Surf, right? Dr. Surf and Surf is an evolved version of Mono Blue Dreadnought. We had pretty good versions of Mono Blue Dreadnought 2 years ago. There were some versions of Dreadnought decks before then, but like it's had a lot of technology built into it. And I was even looking at like the Dixburn deck that I played 12 months ago to win a 1K. Like my deck's actually kind of different from that right now. Lanny Burn is pretty different from the deck that I won. Like we've applied a lot of technology to this. Pit Rack just never had the technological advancements that some of these other strategies have had. Like no good player in the, Lan H, the other Lan H calls it like the second generation of pre-modern settlers or whatever, right? The second generation,
if you will,
colonists. The second generation of pre-modern colonists never applied technology.
Haven't touched Pit Rack, like right, like they've already appropriated all of the native technologies, right? They've taken their horses, they've taken their turquoise and their various gems and their corn and their techniques, and there's just like a little thing sitting there in the corner, and they're just like, oh, what's that? It's just like, oh, this is we call this paper. You know, we write on it and we record our thoughts, and we're like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that's a thing. And then we just like go on with our lives, enjoying the other thing, and we just like completely missed this huge technological advancement. Just like it's like it's in the library of Alexandria, right? It's just like it's been burned down, and one day somebody's gonna blow some dust off a 75, and they're just like, interesting, dark ritual, bottomless pit, funeral charm you. Interesting. I mean, Dead Guy Ale won or led the Swiss, and then they did a top 4 split, like a Dead Guy Ale deck, like just straight up unplayable Dead Guy Ale, as Fran would say, like was just in an Atlanta event that had like over 20 players. You know,
over 20 players. You mean like a weekday meetup? We had 17 at the.
We had 18.
How many?
Yeah,
we had 19 at the meetup on Thursday. I'm so happy with this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah,
why did we not have a 5th round?
What? Well, because it was the winner was deterministic and the bar was closed.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Bar closes at 10. We fire 4 rounds at 6:30. It's like that's why
one of us got there at 7 and still snuck in with the 3-1.
That's why we're doing 40-minute rounds, because we just have to be out we have to try to be out by 10, right? So if we're out at 10:15, it's fine as long as we're not the last ones. And of course, if we bought a lot of beer and food, but like
the last one I won, we were done, and I think me and SWB and Andy just hung out for an hour.
Yeah, that's on that specific day. One of the bartenders, it was their last shift. Oh, okay. So every like me and Ryan were like still in the bar, like celebrating, like hanging out with him, because he was just closing really slowly, right? But on any other Thursday,
never left, and we were just like, oh, this is fine.
Any other Thursday, like the guy Dan who was bartending, he was just like, hey, like we're closing the bar. I gotta clean up. I gotta go home. So. Then it's like, okay, well, we gotta wrap up the games and make sure that we're we're gracious to our hosts. But yeah, I don't know, Pit Rack. You have an assignment now, and that is to apply your 2025 technological.
I'm so mad at myself. I pressed the order button, and I own 3 Antiquities the Racks and 1 FBB.
Amazing.
I should have just bought the 4th freaking Antiquities one, but I didn't think about it until I started. I guess it won't be that bad to have like 3 Antiquities and 1 FBB for 1 meetup or whatever.
Anyways, promo code Flores at Cool Stuff Inc.
I forgot to put promo code Flores.
Oh my god.
Just kidding.
Okay. It's good for the fan. It's good. Anyways, promo code Flores on Cool Stuff Inc.
Somebody asked me.
There won't be any tempting worms left, but
yeah. Oh no, I bought them all. I bought 16. Somebody asked me, it's just like, don't you have platinum rewards? And I'm like, I don't know what that
What's
is.
that?
Because I always put like promo code Flores, but I have platinum rewards. So if you order enough stuff on Cool Stuff Inc., they just radically discount all of your orders. Like, so all of my orders are already 15% off. So promo code Flores does literally nothing.
Yeah, you're just like you're in the frequent flyer club.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but you all listening to this should still put promo code Flores, even though I don't get paid for it.
Yeah, he doesn't get kickbacks. It's like literally just, I don't know, it's just data. They just give that 5% to anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not kidding. I literally don't get a kickback for it, but I still put it in all the time. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was either someone in our Facebook group or someone in our Discord. Just like, I can't imagine you're going to platinum rewards.
Yeah.
And I never looked, and apparently I do.
Yeah, you've definitely spent 5 figures. 5 figures, maybe even 6.
6, come on. No.
6 figures at Cool Stuff Inc.
There's no not to have 6 figures of Cool Stuff Inc. 5 figures is already deep. I what's the platinum rewards minimum?
Well, I'm saying how much you have spent.
That's what I'm saying.
They need another tier above platinum. They need diamond.
I'm gonna look what it says.
You should just be able to go down to the warehouse and just like all you can eat,
Yeah, I have maximum savings, 15% on singles and minis. I don't know how you get it, but apparently it's probably frequent flying, right?
Amazing. Well, that has been Spike Colony Podcasts, right in under the 2:00 wire that you assigned.
It's cold, so I want to be able to go for a run and then be back by 4 because I want to watch my son's game on YouTube.
Yeah, cool.
He played like 1 minute in like the last game I saw, but he got it. Nailed a jumper and had an assist in like his 1 minute, so it was sick.
What's a better card, Bottomless Pit or Sulfuric Vortex?
A better card. I mean,
I think this is contextually driven, right? Like both of them give you the ability to create strategies around.
They are both symmetrical as well.
Yeah, they are. That's an interesting question.
Maybe they're
I'm
the
gonna
same
say
card.
Sulfuric Vortex because of brand loyalty.
Can we?
But I don't know.
Can we play both in the same deck?
That's a lot of 3-drops.
Yeah, it is.
That's a lot of 3-drops.
You're like eight total, and they're also
the
all
pips.
pips.
Is the problem,
the pips
right?
is
Like
the problem.
it's BB, right?
You can't ritual out a Sulfuric Vortex, right?
You can ritual out a Forsaken Wastes. Forsaken Wastes is the original.
Yeah, that's true.
So by the way, Forsaken Wastes was like a very feared Magic card in its era. Obviously, Sulfuric Vortex is better insofar that it does twice as much damage. But the fact that Forsaken Wastes doesn't actually deal damage was
relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, like a control deck couldn't really beat a Forsaken Waste in 1997. Like that was the thing.
All right, so we'll play Forsaken Waste and Bottomless Pit. So your assignment is figure out the Bottomless Pit 75, put it in the Facebook group, put it in the Discord.
Somebody shipped me just a basic. I went and looked at the different pit rack decks on TC decks, and I hated all of them.
No, use your genius. You can't.
I just want a starting place.
No, you can't. You can't goat deck builder this and just be like, but I want to start off here. I
started this podcast by declaring when I invented Tempting Worm in a story that involved stealing it from Dave Kaplan when he beat me. That's how we're gonna end this podcast.
All right. Today is January 25th. I'm gonna hopefully publish this right now. You are going to send Michael J your Bottomless Pit deck by Monday, and Mike will have his Bottomless Pit deck for us by Wednesday.
Well, when's the next meetup? I'll play it at the next. When am I going to play this stupid mono green deck that I paid $200-something?
Nobody asked you to play the mono green deck, okay? But to answer that, if you are in the New York area, the next Manhattan Pre-Modern Meetup will be on Tuesday, February 18th at 6:30. We are trying to figure out a new location because we have capped the office space once again, and might be moving to a store.
Why can't we play at a store?
Because a store doesn't have space for us. The store doesn't have space for 20 people, and it also has pay to play, which isn't a big deal. We can obviously scratch the pay to play, but like we were playing at Bifrost and we got too big or Bifrost got too big for us, right? And like alternate venues have similar issues where it's just like every night of the week there's like a wait list to play, and like we're going to show up with like 20 and 24.
Great for these local businesses.
Yeah, it's great. We're happy that they can't fit us, but the fact of the matter is they can't fit us, so we have to find some alternative solutions. If you own a business with a lot of open table space in New York City, please get in touch. Madison Square Garden, maybe.
Specifically in Manhattan, we have if we were in Manhattan, have all Brooklyn meetups where we actually have that covered.
Yeah, we got Brooklyn covered. But other than that, Pre-Modern's great. Play Sulfuric Vortex, play Bottomless Pit. Sulfuric Vortex doesn't beat Dreadnought, so play Grotog. Play, I don't know, not Goblins, I guess, not Elves, I guess. Shout out to Rochester and Madison. They're having tournaments right now. Maybe at those tournaments, something will be around to defeat Dreadnought that you can play. I am told that the Terrageddon Cabal, which I have implored multiple times to spill their secrets, is bringing a secret awesome list to the Rochester tournament, the Rochester Winter Ball. So maybe we will see that debut and crush the Dreadnought players. I'm excited, but I am more on BK side these days, where I'm just like, man, this Dreadnought deck's better. It's like this Dreadnought deck cannot be overrated right now. Like you cannot assign it a rating that would be overrated.
It's a John Finkel once famously said, the Beatles can both be the number one rated deck, number one rated band, and underrated
at the same time. Yeah.
He says these are not mutually exclusive, and in fact, I think this is correct. Right?
All right. This has been Spike Colony. Love Spike Colony.
All right.